We place our absolute trust in modern medicine's proven ability to locate, measure, and definitively treat precise physical defects. If you visit a cardiologist with chest pain, they don't guess. They track an arrhythmia using objective physiological data from an EKG. An oncologist operates the exact same way. They confirm a malignancy visually, right down to the cellular level. We naturally assume psychiatry operates with that same clinical rigor, that conditions like depression or anxiety are mapped out as cleanly as a physical tumor. Psychiatry occupies a unique position. It defines the very deviations it claims to treat, yet operates without a single definitive biomarker, blood test, or brain scan. Because nature provides no universal baseline for a normal brain or emotional state, we have to ask, what exact biological entity is the field actually diagnosing? The answer begins with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM. Instead of a textbook recording fixed biological discoveries, it acts as a ledger of negotiated categories. History proves this moral elasticity. In 1973, homosexuality was removed entirely from the DSM, shifting from a severe medical disease to normal human behavior by a vote of committee members. While some labels vanish, others grow. The boundary for ADHD has aggressively expanded over the decades, morphing from a rare childhood hyperactivity label into a broad condition diagnosed across the human lifespan. The diagnosis now frequently envelops everyday human traits, like restlessness and distractibility. Yet these behaviors often fluctuate entirely based on cultural expectations and rigid environments, rather than any underlying biological defect. When a diagnostic manual expands its scope, it rarely means we are discovering new diseases. We are simply tightening the cultural boundaries of what counts as an acceptable existence. To justify this expanding boundary, mass messaging told the public for decades that mental distress was caused strictly by a neurochemical deficit. The problem is that the so-called chemical imbalance hypothesis remains exactly that, an unverified theory, not a biological fact. This graph illustrates the results of a 2022 systematic umbrella review in molecular psychiatry. The two lines, serotonin levels and depression severity, operate independently, showing zero consistent intersection. Major research thoroughly challenges the monoamine imbalance model's validity. Building an entire framework of pharmaceutical correction on an unproven hypothesis shifts the discipline away from empirical science and squarely into the realm of theoretical intervention. Down at the level of the individual doctor's office, the absence of objective biological baselines means diagnosis hinges entirely on the clinician's interpretation of affect. The psychiatrist effectively functions as a cultural translator, measuring a patient's personal experiences and behavior against prevailing social norms. This subjectivity carries steep risks. Perfectly coherent, adaptive human responses to modern trauma, inequality, or a loss of autonomy are frequently reframed as internal medical failures. This completes the architecture of the field. Subjective clinical observation effectively launders social deviation into hard medical disorder. Warning tone. When a single system is granted the unchecked power to define normal, it simultaneously gains the power to pathologize anything that challenges the status quo. In 1961, psychiatrist Thomas Szasz published his pivotal critique, The Myth of Mental Illness. His core insight endures today. Psychiatric knowledge operates less as medical discovery and more as a tool for enforcing social regulation under the guise of healthcare. The real-world stakes of this hegemony are severe. It includes the legal authority to institutionalize citizens, mandate powerful medication, and completely restrict human autonomy based solely on contested definitions of normalcy. Because psychiatry's foundation is interpretive rather than empirical, its ethical obligations and the need for intense public scrutiny must be exceptionally high. True progress depends on dismantling a clinical structure that prioritizes correction over comprehension, rather than simply expanding existing services. Emerging movements in peer-led care and experiential advocacy offer an alternative, finally recognizing lived experience as a primary source of knowledge, rather than just an anecdotal supplement. The discipline must practice epistemic humility, surrendering its monopoly on meaning and accepting that it simply does not hold all the biological answers. Normal must be recognized as a vast, adaptable cultural variable. True care requires aligning medical authority with humanity's diversity, rather than attempting to medicate it out of existence.